Hello and welcome to Inspiring Interviews, Conversations about Breath. My name is Benedict Beaumont and I'm the founder of Breathing Space School of Breathwork. And in this video, I interview inspirational breathwork facilitators about their journey into breathwork. Now, I am tremendously excited today to be welcoming Annie into our breathing space to find out a little bit more about her. Now, Annie is the co-founder and president of the French wellness platform monyogavirtual.com. She's an amazingly qualified yoga teacher, 1,500 hours certified, and she does Hatha and Vinyasa and Kundalini. And it's her journey into breathwork that we're going to be exploring today with Alchemy of Breath and biodynamic breathwork and trauma release. Annie is an entrepreneur. She's a best-selling author, a mentor, and the creator behind Essence of Breath, which is based on breathwork, conscious movement, active meditation, and felt senses. She divides her time between Bali and Quebec, two amazing places. And she's a retreat leader and runs a lot of workshops. Now, Annie's mission is to inspire people to put their health first whilst teaching them to love themselves through gentle techniques that they integrate into their daily life. So, Annie, now I'm really excited to be having you on today because I've been aware of you in the breathwork world for quite a long time. I've been aware of you through Anthony at Alchemy of Breath. And of course, I've been seeing all the stuff that you've been doing with biodynamic breathwork and Gitten, and I've been to some of your online seminars, which are not just huge, because there's a lot of people, you have a big audience, but also how really special that they are. So welcome to our breathing space today. Lovely. Thank you for agreeing to come on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy. I didn't know that you've known me for a while, and I teach mostly in French, so I'm not aware of that much of in the English community knowing about my work. So the English sessions are just starting for me, and yes, of course, in Quebec and France, I do have a lot of a big community because I've been working with them in yoga and my online platform for 6 years now. So I've been growing this French community, and now that I teach breathwork, then I've been asked to do more and more English sessions. So it's just, for me, it's just starting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think actually before we start, is it okay to just take a breath together to really bring us into the room? And if you're watching this live on video or even on catch up, just take a breath with us now to really connect.
Perfect. So why not just start by, taking actually a site. Is it the way you say it, a site? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I took a beautiful workshop with Dan Brulé in January. I was here in Montreal, and he taught us the importance of all the sites that we actually have in one day, and actually use them more. And so just like inhaling through the mouth, like, and just exhaling, relaxing the whole body, and doing it 3 times.
Let's do that 3 times then, shall we?
And just and then again. Relaxing the shoulders and the whole body in that side. And again, one last time. And yeah, I started to do that. And it's funny because once you started doing that in your family, everybody's doing it. So as soon as they start hearing, and then everybody's like,
oh,
so
and I love Dan Brulé as well.
Beautiful way.
His book Just Breathe was such an inspiration for me. And just talking about sighing and yawning, he was the first person that made me feel it was okay to yawn. And it was a good thing to see people in your class yawning. And he has that as one of his techniques in his 21-day breath challenge about that's a breathwork technique. And it's not because people are bored, it's because people are resetting. And I was blown away by that. So thank you for bringing a sigh and a sigh into to start off with.
It's a sigh, not a side. It's a sigh. Sigh. That's the way you say it. Sigh.
S-I-G-H. It's written S-I-G-H, but sigh.
Sigh. Okay. Oh, beautiful.
Okay, so for people who don't know you, Annie, maybe you could just give us some facts about yourself, some of the details, some of the Annie 101, if you like. What facts can you tell us about you? I'm going to give you a minute to tell us some facts, as much as you can in 1 minute.
Gosh. Okay. Annie 101. Annie comes from the fashion business, the fashion world. That was my passion. I've been a model, a fashion designer, and a stylist for TV shows for many, many, many years. And my big trauma, the loss of my first child at birth in 2008, changed my life completely. I stopped working in fashion and got more and more into yoga in order to release all that fear of anxiety. Actually, my biggest fear was dying, since I was carrying death when I lost my child. He died inside myself. So that was my biggest thing. And I was looking for answers after that. I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. I went back to my father's house. My husband didn't even know what to do with me anymore. And so yeah, Annie 101 completely changed. From the fashion world to the yoga and meditation and personal development and looking for answers. Why is my body giving me so much pain? Why am I suffering so much? Why do I have so much anxiety? How can I go through my life with all this pain? And so that was the beginning of everything. That was the beginning of a big and long journey of coming back to the source, like understanding, who am I? What am I doing here? What's going on inside myself?
Amazing. So I'm really getting the impression that there's two Annies that we need to talk about here. There's the Annie before 2008 and the Annie after 2008, which is really about your journey. And that's the bit that, we're going to talk about a little bit more. But just tell us a little bit more about Annie previous to 2008. Maybe even little Annie. Tell us about her.
Well, little Annie had a normal life in a small town in Quebec, or close to Quebec City. My parents got divorced when I was 7. I've always been very dynamic, and I always knew where I was, what I was going to do. And I always knew somehow I wanted to be like famous and, like a superstar. And that was my goal when I was little. I just wanted to be someone. My parents were working really hard. My mom was working at the hospital in administration, and my dad was working in, gosh, I have no clue how you call it in English. In French, it's an usine, which is a big shop where they do where they make the papers.
Yeah. Paper mill, maybe.
And so, yeah, that's it. And so when my parents got divorced, I went to stay with my mom, and I was very independent because my mom wasn't coming home for lunch every day. So I had the little key that I was carrying as soon as I was 8 years old. So I was coming with my brother. We were coming back home and, doing our own stuff. And so I've learned to be very independent. So I left the house when I was 17. And then I decided to start traveling. And I wanted to learn English. I didn't know a word of English. I didn't speak a word. So it was my decision to start traveling and learn. So, and then as soon as I did my first trip to the States, I was just like, okay, this is it. I want to see the whole world. And so I really left the house completely 100% when I was 18 and decided to study fashion in Montreal. So I moved, I got my apartment and studied fashion for 3 years. And once I finished, I wanted to take a break and go back to travel and have fun. So that's what I did. And I was I've been recruited by a big model agency here in Montreal. So I told them I wanted to travel. They sent me to the States in Miami. I spent a great amount of time there. And I came back because I didn't like it, honestly. And then I started my first business. I wanted to be a fashion designer. So I've never been working for anyone since I'm 20. I mean, I've always had my own businesses and, you know, so, and yeah, I did lots of mistakes. Oh my God. You know, when you're 20, you have no clue, like how to spend your money and how does it work. And so I've done many mistakes, but it was beautiful. I mean, I've had so much fun. I've did all the fashion shows, Vancouver Fashion Week, Toronto Fashion Week, Montreal Fashion Week. I went to Paris for Fashion Week. I was just, you know, all in and involved and loving what I was doing, but a lot of stress also. There was a lot of stress, and that's what brought me to yoga. So yoga came into my life just to release stress. And that was back 16 years ago, I would say.
Okay.
I was still a fashion designer. And yeah, that's how it just started. But yoga for me was just a stress relief option.
So, so young Annie here, you know, Annie in her 20s, being, you know, a fashion model and starting her own businesses, making a break from home when she was, you know, just 17 or 18, still very young. She sounds really adventurous and, you know, out to go and get the world. Now, in these interviews, I really like to find what inspired people. So let's just go back to 2 phases. So when you were younger, little Annie in your little town just outside of Quebec, who were your heroes then? Who inspired you? And what was really inspiring you when you were young? And then I'll ask the same question for when you were in your 20s as well.
Honestly, I just wanted to be someone. You know, I was looking up to all the big stars, the movie stars, and I knew that, you know, I had to do something big in order to be recognized by my parents and my caregiver. They were great. My parents were great, but very busy. And it's, my mother was always wanted me to be a doctor because I was good in school. And at first, that's what I was going to do. So I studied sciences for maybe half a year, and I was like, this is not me. I mean, I'm doing this because my mom wants me to do that, but I want to be a superstar. So it's not happening. So yeah, I've done so many, and that's what was driving me. And you know, with all the work that I've done on myself, I noticed that the recognition, that's what I was looking for all those years. That's what I was missing. Yes, I knew that my parents loved me, but they never told me. You know, they never actually told me, I love you, you know. And they were not very, how do you say that? In French, we say demonstrative, like they were not very, yeah. So I did feel the love, but I needed, like, you know, more actual stuff. I needed to feel it. And so I've always been driven to be someone because I thought I was going to get love in that way. So when I moved to Miami, right away I got one of the biggest deal on a Hollywood movie. I became like Oliver Stone's production assistant in like 2 days. I was just, you know, like I've done so many things like during that period of time, just to notice that this is not it. I still feel empty, you know, like it's not it. It's not giving me, it's fake love. I mean, I'm really excited and happy that I've been through all these experiences. But I also been very young in the all the crazy world of Hollywood, where drugs and like
Sure.
alcohol, and so but I was always seeing it like not getting too much involved. So I've always been very grounded. I always, I mean, I've always remember the first night I've done with Oliver Stone, and we worked all night long. And in the morning, the first thing that the guys drunk was they opened a bottle of wine, and that was the first drink in the morning at 7 a.m. Going back to, they were taking me back to my apartment, and I was like, this is like very grounded. Annie was like, I'm not sure this is going to work for me. I'm not sure this is the kind of life that I want to actually, that's going to bring me love, actually real love. And so very young, I decided to, I remember the day I called Oliver Stone and telling him after 6 months, this is not me. This is not, little Annie doesn't want that. You know, like, this is not what I want for myself. And he told me, I will always remember, he told me, Annie, you are way too pure for this business. You're very different than everybody I've ever met.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy you're calling me to telling me that you're not following us to Hollywood, to LA, because this is the best decision you're gonna do in your life. And I was like, really?
That's an amazing, because you know, you must have been quite young then, and to be surrounded by those powerful people in that kind of the glamour and the glitz, and to still have the wisdom to know that this wasn't for you, and to know that, you know, you wanted something more and something deeper, and it wasn't filling you up. That's, you know, when I think back to my own 20s, and most of the people I've met are not capable or not ready to make that decision. Where do you think you found that wisdom and that realization from? Where did that come from?
Well, modeling world was pretty empty. And so I had a lot of time to process and just cry and write and really already go deep and see, okay, what do I want for myself? What makes sense, what doesn't? And so traveling very young gives you a certain maturity. You have no choice. You have to survive, and you have to meet people, and then you have to protect yourself also. And even then, I made a lot of mistakes. I trusted people but I mean, you're 18. What do you want to do? I mean, you have to go through all these experiences. But I've always felt that I had a guardian angel, because so many times I could have been in trouble, like big trouble. And I've always been so lucky. I mean, I guess it's not luck. I've always felt protected and very mature. And I don't know where it comes from, honestly. Maybe all these years of independence, my mother giving me strength to be independent, to know exactly how does it feel inside. Does this feel good for you or not? And so I've always trusted my inner voice very much to know if it's the right thing for me or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you brought your mother in there, and that was one of the gifts you said that she gave you, that strength.
Oh my God, if you want to talk about my mother,
I don't know,
can go really far, because my mother just passed. She passed a year ago. And you know, my mother was scared of everything. So I don't understand how she gave me that strength, that assertiveness, and like trust and confidence, because she was scared of the thunder. She was scared of driving in a city she doesn't know. She was scared of sleeping by herself in a house. She was scared of everything, and her father was the same. So my mother gave me that anxious side of myself. And but at the same time, she gave me great strength. So it's very weird. It's two polarities, but I know it comes from her. And you know, my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer when she was only 59, and
Really young.
she died, yeah, very young. And she died a year in December 2018 when I was in a biodynamic breathwork training in Bali, and it was one of the most powerful experiences of my life. Honestly, that's really when the breath took all its senses for me. I mean, I can't remember which level, because I finished all my trainings with Giten, but I can't remember. I remember exactly when I got the phone call. It was our day off, because in Bali, Giten's training is like 10 or 11 days, and we always have one day off right in the middle of the week of the 10 days. And I remember being on my balcony facing the ocean, getting that phone call from my husband telling me, I'm not sure this is the right place to tell you that, but I felt that I have to tell you because I feel that you're at the right place to process. And then he told me, your mother fell down yesterday in the center. So she didn't die from Alzheimer.
Yeah.
She fell, and I guess she broke something. She broke like a lung or something, and she started having water in her lungs and many problems. And I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I know that it happened after the fall. And so he told me she didn't pass yet, but she will. They give her about 48 hours, 72 hours. And then I crashed, completely crashed. And I was scheduled to do the demo with Giten the next day, or probably the next day or something. And it was the diaphragmatic belt of tension. And if you're familiar with Giten's training, there's always a student who do the demo with him. So he teaches the demo using you to show the students, you know, how they're going to work. And so they asked me if I still wanted to do that demo. And I said, I was all over the place, honestly. I had to make a decision not going back there because it would have taken me 3 days. And I mean, I wouldn't have made a difference, you know. So I decided to stay in the training throughout all the process. And so I did the demo, and it was the most powerful breathwork session of my life. And that's really, really when I understood the power of this technique, like in order to process trauma and deep, deep, deep emotions. And so, that's why I love that story about my mother, because it feels that it ended with that, with
that breath that you took.
Oh my God. And you know what? She died right after the demo. I finished the demo with 50 students looking at me, crying. And Giten asked me to look at every one of them and ask them for support, which I never do. I never ask for support. I support myself. And so I did. And I asked every one of them, please, would you support me during the next few days? Crying my life. And then I go back to my room, and then I get the phone call of my brother saying, Annie, I'm with mom. And I think that it's been 1 minute since she hasn't taken a breath. And then I told him, she's gone. She's gone. You can go and get someone, tell them that she's gone and you need help. Right after the demo. And so, I mean, this story is just, for me, it's just a confirmation. It's a confirmation of what the power of what we teach, of what we do. And it's absolutely fascinating. It's the most beautiful thing.
That's an incredible story, Annie. And I'm feeling myself becoming emotional hearing that story. So Can I just ask, what was your mother's name?
Louise.
Louise. Can I just acknowledge her here? And let's just take a breath with her and her passing and that story, because I feel like I'm with you taking that breath now. I'm feeling like I'm one of those 50 students that you have just done that demonstration for, that belt of tension for. So let's take a breath with that, shall we?
Thank you.
And for Louise.
Yeah. Yeah, for my mom.
Thank you so much for bringing her in and that story. That's a very powerful story that I know people, will really, really feel for. And that breath, that last breath that people take to be able to witness and to hold someone as they pass, as they move on to their, as they pass from this world onto the next one, is one of the deepest services that we can offer people. And it doesn't have to be
definitely.
that we're with them. We can still take that breath with them if we're not with them, but to be with them there energetically.
I got to speak to her before the demo, and my brother put me on speaker, and I really allowed her to really release that last breath. I told her it was okay, and she was ready, and we were ready, and that everything went super. And that same night, in Bali we do offerings. And then one of the students, my dear friend Sanaja, that maybe already, Sanaja prepared a whole little offering, and we did a ceremony at night, and we put it in the ocean with a candle. And since my room was facing the ocean, Sanaja told me, before you go to bed tonight, just take a look and see if you still see her. And I said, yeah, no problem, I will. So we did the ceremony. We did the offering, and on the ocean, and then at 11 o'clock, I looked throughout my window the ocean, and the candle was still there, but so far, so far. And then you were just seeing the moon and the little candle on the ocean, and I was just like, oh my God, this is just so perfect. It's just so perfect. I mean, it was just a confirmation that it was the right decision to stay there in Bali, and process my journey there.
Yeah.
It's the best I could do for her, for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the questions I often ask people is to, describe a very powerful breathwork experience that they have. And you've already done that for me. That's, I can't imagine that there's much more powerful ones I'm sure there are very powerful breathworks that you've had. Okay, well, let's go back to Annie in her 20s then, and tell us, so there you are, having had a very successful career, as a model and as a fashion designer, working down in the States and traveling and experiencing, being very ambitious. And then you discovered yoga, and tell us about your transition into that kind of world.
I discovered yoga. At the beginning, it was hatha yoga. And at the same time, I met my husband, who was already involved in many different modalities, and Kundalini, Kriya Yoga of Babaji. And he was already a Reiki practitioner, and was doing already many, many things. And so the first time he told me about Kundalini, I was curious, So I went to a studio where I was practicing Ashtanga, and I looked throughout the window, and then I saw they were chanting, and then they were doing really crazy sounds, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm not sure this is for me,"
Yeah.
And then I came back home and I told him, I'm not sure I'm ready for this. And it's so funny because I wasn't ready for this. I was into Ashtanga, Vinyasa, and then, everything that's very cardio and gets your body to move.
Yeah, very yang, very kind of, yes. That was my story as well, Annie.
Yeah. And actually Kundalini came to me after right after the trauma, after the birth of my son. It's really when Vinyasa and Ashtanga were not doing anything good for me anymore. It didn't even make sense for me. I couldn't do my usual practice anymore. And so that's when I decided to try Kundalini, and the results were amazing. I mean, I was suffering from fibromyalgia, and a lot of chronic pain, and there was nothing that could help. Nothing was helping. I was having pain 24 hours per day. It was never stopping. I couldn't sleep. And then when I started practicing Kundalini with the deep pranayamas that we use, especially breath of fire, and all the other ones, I noticed that the pain was kind of going away for like an hour or two and then coming back. And then I was like, okay, there's something there. What makes the pain go away for an hour or two and then come back when I do a Kundalini practice? And then I started being even more curious and wanting to really understand what's going on in my body in order for the pain to go away. And so later on, I understood that the pain was just stuck, charged, like the energy was stuck. I was so anxious. I was so scared of dying, after 2008 for many, many years. Even still, I still have little glimpse of all that episode. But Kundalini really break through the blockages, because the pranayamas are so deep, and even sometimes it's just like violent. It's like, you really go for it. And then breath of fire, it's just like the body has no choice but to respond. And so after I understood that part of it was all breath. I mean, it was the breath. Yes, we do movements and stuff, but the power of the breath was pushing the blockages, was actually pushing the charge everywhere in the body. And that's what my body needed. My body was so contracted, I didn't even know from the fear. And so obviously right away, I decided to really dive into Kundalini, the training, and, decided to take the training after a few years of practice. And it really, really changed my life. That was the major change. I got it from Kundalini, really.
Yeah, the Kundalini.
I'm still an Hatha Vinyasa teacher, and I still love Hatha Vinyasa.
Of course.
But the meaning is different for me. I do Hatha Vinyasa to stretch. I do Hatha Vinyasa to have a powerful yoga session. But I do Kundalini with a specific theme in order to help me go through something. So, Kundalini is a specific, has more than 2,000 kriyas with specific themes. So you can really choose, okay, what do I need today? What do I want to work on? So it just makes more sense for me.
Yeah. So that's a really powerful journey, because you spoke at the beginning of the interview about the death of your son and suffering from chronic fibromyalgia, which, I know is such a big burden for people to go through that. And it was Kundalini that started your awakening process on that and your journey into where you are now. Yeah. And I know people now who suffer from fibromyalgia who just occasionally get a glimpse of something that might help, that might kind of lift the cloud. I've heard it described as a cloud that fogs your brain and your body. For that to lift for just a little while is, very powerful medicine to have, and very magnetic when it draws you in. Okay. And by all means say no here, but would you just like to, you mentioned about your son and carrying death within you. Is there anything else you'd like to say about that, here, and maybe not for you, but maybe for other people who have been through that experience as well?
Honestly, I was more traumatized by the fear of death than that by the loss that I was experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the problem with this experience, and now I understand with all the studies that I've done, is that when I got to the hospital, I had a fever. I was 6 months pregnant. And as soon as they did, how do you say that? When they do an ultrasound.
Ultrasound.
Yeah, ultrasound. So, and they saw right away that there was no more heartbeat. So right away they look at me like, I'm really sorry, but there's no heartbeat, and you're gonna have to give birth tonight naturally. I was like, what? And that's called shock. Mm-hmm. So when you go into shock, because you're really not expecting a news like this, the problem is that, well, we all know, well, most of us know that we go into the fight or flight response, or we freeze. Mm-hmm. And the problem with me is that it was overwhelming. My whole body was overwhelmed because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And right away, they put me on drugs. So I couldn't feel anything. So that's when the problem occurred. The problem is that when you go into a huge shock and you cannot even feel your emotions because of the drug, because of the fact that your body froze because it's too overwhelming, that's a big problem, because it doesn't mean that you're not feeling anything. It just means that you're repressing everything. So these mm-hmm. feelings are still there, and the fight or flight response is still happening, but you're saying no, don't want to deal with it. So that's exactly what happened for me. I gave birth. I stayed at the hospital for 2 weeks. Then I went right back to work with the whole bag of medication that they were giving me
intravenously.
I don't know how you call that, but yes, thank you. So right away, back to work as if nothing happened. Nothing happened. So I went back to crazy work. I was a stylist back then. Mm-hmm. So nothing happened. Then 3 months later, symptoms are coming. Headaches all the time, cannot sleep anymore. And then the body starts to feel pain at weird spots. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Well, it's just called that. That's the problem. It's that I never finished my cycle of fight or flight. I never had the chance to scream, this is not fair. Or like, no, or whatever, scream, cry. I never did it. I never had the chance. So I never had the chance to really feel what was happening. So of course the healing never processed. I mean, and then 3 months later, the body knows that it hasn't been processed. So the body sends symptoms like, okay, here's a headache, here's pain, here's this, here's that. I had like, I don't know how you call that. You know, when your ears make a sound like, I had that all the time.
Tinnitus.
Horrible. Oh, yeah. Horrible. So all these symptoms were coming. And I was just like, what the hell is going on? And how am I going to survive this? And every time there was a new symptoms, the more anxious I was getting and the more symptoms I was getting. So it made no sense. But today I understand what happened. You know, when you go into that freezing mode, when you don't have access to your feelings, the body is going to find a way to try to release one day, you know. And I really wish I had known all these informations back then, because I had to take medication for many years since I couldn't function. I couldn't function. The pain was so hard that I couldn't have a normal life. And I had to accept to take medication at some point that I took for many, many years. And then I became a typical case of deep anxious person. So, and usually these type needs to take medication for all their life, you know. But they didn't know Annie. When Annie has something in mind, there was no way I was going to take medication all my life. So I had to find a way to reprogram the body, so the body could understand that his normality is not being threatened by something, by death or anything else. But this is super difficult to reprogram your body, because your body thinks that his normal self is being in fear and freaking out and being contracted and, you know, being threatened by something all the time. Yeah. So how do you reprogram your body from that to a normal self, a more balanced self? Well, it took me so many years, and the breath work really made the difference.
Well, let's just come on to that. But first of all, Annie, the reason I do these interviews is because I get inspired by people's stories. You know, I listen to people's stories and I kind of go, wow, that is really powerful what you've done there. And I just want to acknowledge here that journey that you just described and the events that happened to you and the trauma of all that and the challenge of you know, what you went through there, and to see you now and to hear you tell that story with such compassion and wisdom is really inspiring. You know, I can feel myself just sitting back going, wow, you know. And if anyone, you know, when people watch this and when they hear your story, and I know at least, you know, half a dozen people who have had very difficult experiences, not so dissimilar to yours, who will listen to this and be inspired and kind of find hope and know that there is a way out of the fog. So I have to say, I'm so grateful for you to coming on and being so honest and candid and, you know, open about sharing your journey, because it is just hearing your testimony is really powerful. So thank you for sharing that. And I really mean that. I feel very, very blessed to have witnessed your story here. And I know that other people will as well. So thank you for that first. Yeah, really inspiring. That's just inspired me. So then I've got, you know, after those experiences, you know, which most people would just stay on medication for the rest of their life, you know, but obviously that's not you, Annie. You started Kundalini and then breathwork. So let's move on to, like, how did you I mean, I know Kundalini yoga, there's so much breathwork in that, but tell us about your movement into breathwork then. Tell us about your journey there.
I discovered breathwork in the Wanderlust Festival 6 years ago. My friend was teaching transformational breath. And of course, 6 years ago, I was still dealing with anxiety. I was still taking medication as well. I lay down, did the session, and then my body started vibrating like crazy. And all I could hear was, "You are alive. You're not dying right now. You are alive." I mean, of course, you're going to die one day. But right now, your body is telling you that every single cell is alive. What are you waiting for? And then I cried. I went to my friend at the end of the session saying, "Is this crying ever stop? Because I'm not sure what's happening inside myself right now." And she said, "This crying needs to be there. This crying needs to happen. And just, you know, go with it, and it's all good." From that moment on, I knew I was going to teach breathwork from that first experience. Why? Because my body was telling me the opposite of what I was feeling, because my body finally responded right away to a technique telling me what I need to hear. And I am alive. I'm alive. What am I going to do with this? And that's when it all came to me. You need to teach this because people need to feel alive too.
Mm-hmm.
Many people live in fear. How do we get to fear, from fear to actually living your full potential, your mission? And everything was happened in that specific moment. So I started doing some research on transformational breath. It was complicated doing all, because when I do something, I want everything to happen fast. So I wanted to take the whole training in like 6 months.
Yeah, I'm getting that
And
impression
it
from you, Annie.
wasn't possible. It wasn't really possible. So there was like one training in the States, and one training in Europe, and then one training there. And I was like, oh, this is so complicated. How am I going to do this? And then in the meantime, my husband was just getting tired of, he was working in as a mortgage broker, and was working so much, was working all the time. And one night he woke up. We had a big house, 2 big cars, like, you know, the big life. And woke up during the night, and he told me, I can't do this anymore. I can't. I'm not happy. I'm not feeling it. This is not life. And I told him, well, what are we gonna do? And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, let's just sell everything. Let's just get rid of everything and just go for 1 year, travel around the world. My daughter was 4. He's like, you would really do that? You know, he's the adventurous. I'm not. I mean, a little bit, but compared to him, forget about it. So it's just like, really? Are you serious? And I'm like, yeah. And then the next day, we put the house for sale. It took 2 days. It was sold. And that was a confirmation and we were doing the right thing. So we ended up traveling to Thailand, Cambodia, Malaysia, and then we ended up in Bali at the Bali Spirit Festival.
Mm-hmm.
And just like that, I mean, just like that. And then Anthony was giving a big session, and it was like 300 people. And I told Yancy, my husband, do you want to do it? Shaya and I, we're going to be sitting right beside you guys, and we're going to watch the session. So that's what we did. And then again, I felt the same thing. I wasn't even breathing. And I was, oh my God, this is it. This is really it. And then I wrote to Anthony, we did a Skype, and then he was telling me about the level 1. There was one in London really fast. So I went to London, then came back to Quebec, did the other stuff online, and went back to Bali, finished with Anthony, told Anthony, okay, I want to teach this. How we're going to do this. And so he's like, oh, okay. He didn't have any trainers at that time. I was the first one. He's like, okay, let's do it. You want to do it? Let's do it. And so we sat down, and then I translated the whole training in French, and then really fast, boom, boom, I was teaching the level 1 in Quebec, and then we did 3 full completed trainings, so 3 years. That I did with completed with Alchemy of Breath for my students, probably 12 to 25 students per trainings. And yeah, that's it. It just went super fast. I mean, and in the meantime, since I was in Bali, I decided to take Gitan's training because I'm always studying. I'm an eternal student, and I really fell in love with the modality. And it's at one point I decided to go on my own, and called Anthony, and I had to tell him that there were so many things I wanted to add to the training that made sense for me in my journey, my own healing, that I had to do my own stuff. And I'm glad I did, just because the training that I'm giving now, Essence of Breath, it's just everything that I've been studying for so long. It's 16 years of trainings in different modalities.
Yeah.
And so my training is very unique.
Sure.
There's nothing like it. And it's just, I'm not saying it's better than other ones. It's just my training makes sense for me. And
Well, I remember Anthony saying the
so,
same thing when he first had students come to him saying, can you teach us how to do this? He said, he sat down and he thought, if I'm going to teach you, I'm going to have to teach you everything that I've learned, all of my teachers and all the learnings that I've got. And, he developed his own teachings that was him. So I completely hear, and, for myself as well, it's the same thing with, when I take students on, it's not what I've learned from one teacher or one modality, it's everything, because everything informs. Okay, so
but I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for all of them, I need to say. I mean, all the teachers I've been in everything we do.
Should we just have a breath with all our teachers then, to just acknowledge Anthony and Giten and because I've got lots as well. Let's have a breath with all of our teachers to really honor them, shall we?
Yay. Let's do it. Oh yeah, big inhale. Oh yeah.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you for all our great teachers. There has been many with them,
which is you as well for many people now as well, Annie. I know you're that teacher for people as well. I'd really like to hear a bit more about Giten's training that you did, and how that the differences between that and alchemy of breath. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
When I did Giten training, what really made a lot of sense for me, who was suffering from chronic pain, was the conscious movement. And the conscious movement actually changed my life also. That's another thing that changed my life. I come from a world where the ego played a big role. I told you I wanted to be a superstar at the beginning. And so, I grew up really being careful about what I wear, always being I don't know how you call it in English, but the front was really important for me when I was younger. And so the way you dance is important, the way you move is important, the way you dress. And when I did dance training, my ego started to just bye-bye. And because I learned how to move from the inside. And moving from the inside for me has been a great deal of answers to many questions I had, to many limited beliefs that I was holding. And the breathwork is the modality, the breathwork technique is similar to other ones, but incorporating movements makes a huge difference for me. Listening to what your body needs to express. Wow. Usually I move my body in the way that people want me to move my body, There's a huge difference for little Annie. Now it's, what does Annie really need? How does her body needs to move in order to have the breath go everywhere with freedom, So being able to tune in with that specific need of the body has been amazing for me. Really amazing. Being in touch with what do I need and not caring what I look like when I move this way, let's say. So not caring at all, actually, because all the exercise that we do in the training gives us access to what we feel, embrace what we feel, and just push a little bit the ego a little bit and just say, no, we don't need you right now. I mean, ego is great. Ego has good stuff, it's not just bad. But in order to really tune in with your deepest need, you can have the ego in the way. And so it's been amazing. Conscious movements have been amazing within a breathwork sessions in order to go to places where I've never been. So
Okay.
practicing breathwork laying down for me is fun. But it's not what I like to teach, and it's not what I like to necessarily experience for myself. Sure. I do it sometimes. I also use hyperventilating, laying down and working with altered state of consciousness. It's fun. I like it. But if you ask me, what do you prefer? For me, what really made the difference was working 100% with the body. Not with the altered state of consciousness. Sure. It's really within the body. You know, of course, you're talking with someone who's been carrying and dealing with pain. Yeah. So of course I want to have answers and work with my body. I want to understand how to really understand what's going on and why is it stuck, you know, all these emotions and these contractions. And so Gaetan's training really helped me work with 100% of my physicality.
Lovely. And that's a beautiful description. Beautiful. Yeah, I really love that. And I love the way that you said it's not how other people want me to move, it's how, you know, little Annie, or, you know, inside how I need to move. That's a great way of putting it. Okay, well, let's move on to Essence of Breath then, and what you're doing now, you know, from some incredible teachers that you've had and some incredible awakenings and an incredible journey. Tell us a little bit about Essence of Breath.
Essence of Breath is a training based on many different components. So yes, breath work is the biggest component. The way I use the connected breathing is really slow. So we are super ventilating, but not hyperventilating. So we're not using, so we're really going to focus on the inhale, like making sure that belly, rib cage, and upper chest gets filled up. And then on the exhale, we just, you know, relax even more our body. So it's very slow, very gentle. And I also use nose breathing. So for many of my customers, and if I teach at night, I use nose breathing, connected breathing, but through the nose, since we're working more on the parasympathetic nervous system. So I don't think that activating the sympathetic nervous system is good for everyone, depending what they need and depending what they're going through. So for me, both techniques are super important, depending on what we want to achieve.
Sure.
So I also work with the active meditation. Gaetan used active meditations from Osho's. In Essence of Breath, we have our own. So active meditation have many different components, from Kundalini meditations to freestyle dancing, unwinding of the spine, all kinds of different things in our active meditations. Then we also use, there's a division in Essence of Breath, which is called Essence Flow. And Essence Flow is a system that it's similar to Kundalini yogas, in the way that we have specific kriyas in order to release a specific chakra of, you know, the 7 chakras. And if you know about the 7 belts of tensions that Gaetan works with, they are mostly related to the 7 chakras. So I use specific kriyas, so different yoga postures. Some of them comes from Kundalini, some of them come from Hatha yoga, and some of them comes from different other modality. And these kriyas are specifically made to release let's say, one of the chakra or one of the belts of tensions. And the postures are very simple. It's always about 7 postures per kriyas. And so I do use, the body goes into different postures with the breath work to release something specific. So that component of the yoga component into the breath work, I'm probably the only one who does that in a training, unless there are other ones that I don't know about. For me, it makes sense. It just makes sense because my yoga has been so important for me that combining the two in this specific way really has been showing amazing results for my community. So I also use the music, facilitators touch, but we don't do deep body work as Giten does. So we do small touch, like the touching that we do is mostly aiming to making sure people breathe correctly and fully, and it's to bring them into conscious movement, because it's so difficult for people to start. How do we move? You tell them about conscious movement, but they're like stuck. They're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to start. It's weird. So the touch is really in order to help them getting to that movement. And we give them options with our touch, that what body part could be moving and how. So we use that too. So we have 5 levels. The level 1 is a weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And now because of what we're going through right now, I'm doing it live on internet. Usually it's in person. So for the first time, I will be teaching the level 1 with Zoom. So level 2 has always been online. Level 2, I work with a psychologist, and we do the whole level 2 together. And we go through all the 7 chakras, and we go through the psychological aspect and the energetical aspect of each chakras. And we talk about the charge. How does each chakra handles the charge in that specific place in the body? So level 3 is all about teaching groups and teaching individuals. So it's pretty the stuff you need to know if you become a teacher. And level 4 is a glimpse of essence flow. So they learn the specific kriyas for the different belts of tension and the different chakras. So they learn the basic of essence flow, because if they want to get certified in essence flow, they need to do that specific week of training 4 times. So then they really become yoga teacher and breath worker, but yoga teacher in essence flow certification. And then our level 5 is similar to Anthony. It's a breath camp where people teach, the facilitator gets to teach a group. Because it's not everybody who can gather like 30 to 60 people and really teach a big group. So that's how we do it.
I love how it's so structured and so clear, and there's such a good pathway through doing it. And it sounds so beautifully structured. I think I want to take that training now, Annie.
It's really nice. And we have beautiful students. And you know what? I'm so impressed by how many doctors I get in the training, how many psychologists, psychotherapists take my training. And it gives me a lot of hope. I got a lot of nurses as well, people from the medical. And it gives me so much hope, because I believe that we should work together. I strongly believe that, I mean, I've taken medication many years of my life. I've been to psychotherapists. I've been dealing with psychologists and psychiatrists, and they've done an amazing job, honestly. And I'm not saying medication is bad. I'm just saying that sometimes in life we do need to some help. Actually, we need some help. And you know, taking medication for all these years helped me be actually balanced, and gave me the chance to study all those years what I really wanted to do with my life. And with all these the studies that I've done, I could achieve my goal, which was living a normal life without medication. So thank you to the medication for these years or where I couldn't function.
Yeah.
You know, so I believe the medical and the breath work, the yoga, meditation and how do you call it? Pleine conscience. How do you say that in English? Mindfulness. Are just amazing ways that we should work together with the medicals.
You know what? We don't often do this. We don't actually often like acknowledge, you know, in the worlds that we move in, like there's the importance and the power and like of medicine and how that can support people's journey as well. You know, I hear a lot of negativity about people taking antidepressants, for instance, or medication, but you know, really it's a lifesaver for so many people for so long as well. So I'm going to just thank you for acknowledging that. I really appreciate you doing that. Okay, so I'll put links to your website and to your training up on the links and up on the YouTube video when we upload it. So we've been going over an hour now, Annie. I normally cap it on now, but you've got such a good story. I didn't want to kind of rush this. So a couple of things before we finish. So this is inspiring interviews about conversations about breath. But so let's just talk about inspiring. Who is inspiring you right now? Who kind of do you look at and go, wow, okay, yeah, that I find that really inspiring?
Honestly, there's no specific name because right now I'm so involved with the students, the community. And honestly, every time I get a share, you know, I'm doing a breathwork collective right now, and we get 300 people gathering for our breathwork sessions every day. And the community inspires me. Like,
what a beautiful,
tremendous.
I mean, beautiful answer. And you know, I feel the same when people show up in their vulnerability and their strength and they share from their heart every single time. It's like like a punch and a cuddle and a hug. And I have to agree with you there. So, okay.
And of course, right now with the uncertain times that we're going through, I'm just so impressed by everyone that are going through losing their job or going through something very difficult, losing someone they love. I mean, I know, I've been there, and right now it's so scary, you know. So I get a lot of emails in one day, a lot of emails, and people share. They just feel the need to share with me. And every time I read them, I'm just like inspired. I'm inspired, and I'm of course inspired to continue to study, continue to share, and continue to have all these teachings evolve. And being able to share them with them is just one of the most precious gifts, because every one of them are my teachers, and especially my daughter.
Well, I saw your daughter in the background earlier. She's not there now, but I was a high school teacher for many years, and I always say that I always learned way more than the kids did from just being around them.
Oh yeah.
Okay, two more things then. One is, you know, we've talked about what's inspired you and how your students and your community inspire you. What would you like to inspire in others, Annie?
That nothing is impossible, and honestly, no matter what you do, connect to the heart and you can never go wrong. It's just it's just the way I go by. I mean, that's my life. And no matter what you decide to work on, to share as a work, it has to be completely based on your why. Why are you doing this? It's going to make the whole difference. Don't do it for the money. Don't do it for any other reason than why. In my heart, why am I doing this? And that's it. The rest, don't forget about the results. Forget about, just give, like connect with that mission that you want to it. If you want it to become your work, then fine. For me, I don't even consider what I do work. It's just sharing and sharing. Thank God I can earn my life by doing what I love. But there's no other way. There's no other way, because this is my why. You know, this is my deep, profound mission. So I wish everybody could tap in to that, you know, it used to be my biggest weakness. And now it's my biggest strength. Use your weakness. Use them. They can all become your biggest strength.
Wow.
So that's it.
Nothing is impossible. Connect to your heart and nothing can go wrong. Your biggest weakness can become your biggest strength. Just and know why you are doing what you are doing. There's so much wisdom in just that little bit there, Annie. Okay, well, maybe let's start. We should finish off. You know, we've been going, you know, 10 minutes over our hour now. And I wonder if, to finish off, you would like to lead us in a few breaths, or a few breaths of any particular technique or any style for us to close off this interview.
You know, my favorite of all, even if I teach connected breathing, is and will always be heart coherence. I do it 3 times a day, and especially when I wake up in the morning and before I go to bed at night. When I do this technique, when I use this technique, there's something that's happening inside. It feels like I reset. You know, I just go back to point 0. And it's super important, because we'll go through so much during the day, and then the way you start your day and the way you finish your day is extremely important. So that's why I like to reset always, morning, before lunch, and at night before I go to bed. So Amazing. It's really, really simple.
Okay,
so
could you maybe teach us in a couple of rounds of it? Yeah.
Sure. We're going to inhale through the nose, and we're going to count to 5. So inhaling through the nose, we count to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we exhale through O-shape mouth, and we count through to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we continue. Inhale through the nose. We count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhaling through the mouth in an O shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And one last time. Inhale through the nose, count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhaling through the mouth in the O shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. You just have to do it for 5 minutes. 5 minutes morning, 5 minutes before lunch, 5 minutes before going to bed at night. And it's Beautiful. Amazing. It's just a reset. Beautiful reset. It's called the 3-6-5 method.
3-6-5 method. Well, Annie,
3 times a day,
3 times a day
per minute, and 6 times per minute, and 5 minutes every time.
Sure. 3-6-5, like the number of days in a year as well.
Yeah.
Well, Annie, thank you so much for your time this morning. That was an incredible hour. Hearing your journey and your testimony, and the breakthroughs that you've made is really inspiring. It's inspired me, and I know that people watching this, you will not, if you watch this interview, if you've got to this point, you will be inspired and you will want to go out. You will want to have that daily practice. You will want to go out and come and do Essence of Breath with you. So bless you, Annie. Thank you so much for your time this morning. And I can't wait to see where your journey, what happens next.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blessing, and you are incredible. I can't wait to watch all your other interviews. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Namaste.
Bye-bye. Let's